Hey, somebody needs to ice Hannah's fish. You have? Excellent. Good morning, afternoon, or evening. You are listening to The Professional Noticer. Hello, everyone. I'm Andy Andrews. Hey, thank you for making me a part of your week. My purpose here today with every show we do is to play the part of a best friend or a coach. I want to help you live the life of your wildest dreams by giving you access to the greatest mentors the world has to offer today. The Professional Noticer is sponsored this week by Vortex Optics. In 1986, Dan and Margie Hamilton started a small retail store in Middleton, Wisconsin called Wild Birds Unlimited. The store sold bird feed and binoculars for bird watching, but in 2002, the Hamiltons founded Vortex Optics. Now, 20 years later, Vortex is still an American manufacturer based in Wisconsin with dealers throughout the U.S., Canada, and the United Kingdom, Europe, South Africa, Australia, and beyond. Vortex products are so good that the company issues a VIP, a very important promise, to each and every customer. Vortex will repair or replace your Vortex product in the event it becomes damaged or defective at no charge to you. If we cannot repair your product, we will replace it with a product in perfect working order of equal or better physical condition. You see, it doesn't matter how it happened, whose fault it was, or where you purchased it. If you ever have a problem, no matter the cause, we promise to take care of you. You can count on the VIP warranty for all Vortex Optics, rifle scopes, prism scopes, red dots, rangefinders, binoculars, spotting scopes, tripods, and monoculars. Unlimited, lifetime warranty, fully transferable, no receipt needed. Check them out, vortexoptics.com. Observations and answers, that's what we do here on The Professional Noticer. And as you know, we love it when somebody comes to the table with both. We have an old friend here today, somebody you will be familiar with, the most interesting man in the world. That's right, we have Walt Merrill. Hey, Walt.
The Professional Noticer, we give you access to the greatest mentors in the world. And sometimes we give you access to this other guy named Walt.
Listen, man, our viewers and listeners love you.
Well, I love being here, and I love them too. And what a great what a great thing it is that we have the ability now to share of ourselves with people and get this instant conversational feedback. And so you realize one of the things I so much enjoy about doing this show with you and about doing other things is that you realize, you know what, there are a lot of good people in the world, and there are a lot of like-minded people, and a lot of people that just want to see the world be a little bit better, and that's what, isn't that what this is all about?
Yeah, man. Yeah. Walt is the district attorney for Covington County in Alabama, and he has stories about being a district attorney. He's also the best-selling author of the Shepherding Outdoors series, which is kind of outdoor, kind of parenting, kind of family, kind of life skills. Excellent series of books. Excellent series of books. And so we appreciate you being here.
A whole lot of flying by the seat of your pants in both worlds.
Well,
I had a judge one time tell me that there were real life cowboys, and then there were lawyers who thought they were cowboys, and they wasn't sure exactly which one I was. And I laughed and said, Judge, I just hope if I ever am shooting from the hip, I got bullets in my gun and not in my shirt pocket.
Boy, that's true. Oh, my gosh. Well, you and I talk and text, and we were laughing before the show about I want to call it a viewer, but I'm not sure how much of a viewer this is. We got an email last week that said, we love your show. We love your show. I've got a suggestion for a guest for you. His name is Walt Merrill. And, in the office, we're all laughing. We're like, I don't know how much of a viewer this is. Walt's already been on 3 or 4 times.
How much do you love the show?
Yeah. How much do you love it enough to watch it? Because Walt is like, you are officially our most frequent guest.
Well, what an honor.
Isn't that cool?
Thank you. Yeah,
that cool?
Very cool.
It's like if the Tonight Show, if Johnny Carson said, we've had so-and-so on more than anybody else, you'd think, well, that's a pretty big deal. Yeah, so it's not quite a big deal as being on the Tonight Show a bunch of times, but.
So am I Milton Berle? Am I the Milton Berle
I wouldn't think Milton Berle would be the one.
Probably not.
Golly. Who would it be?
I don't know. Maybe Burt Reynolds. What a great, there's way too many people who have no idea what the Tonight Show is. Man, I see him looking through the window right there. He has no clue what the Tonight Show is.
Well, he doesn't know who the Osmonds are.
That's right.
So
yeah, he does.
If you don't know who the Osmonds are, he might not know who Johnny Carson is. But Johnny Carson's still the best.
Did I tell you, speaking of courtroom drama, did I tell you that I have now made great statements of public policy in the judiciary in the state of Alabama.
Really?
Yes.
Explain that.
So, I am...
a big deal.
I do. No, I don't know if I'm I like to march to the beat of my own drum, though. So I have this long, unkempt hair, and I occasionally trim my beard. And
I was going to say, your hair's pretty short today.
It is kind of... I did get a haircut recently. I had a lady stop me yesterday, and she said, the best thing about you, and I wasn't looking for a compliment, but when that's the lead in, the best thing about you, I think, well, I don't know, but
could you make a list?
Yes, but flatter me or something, right? And so I sort of sheepishly kind of puffed my chest out and said, well, no, ma'am. And she said, you wear Birkenstocks. So, of all the things she could have said.
That's the best? Okay.
So the judges issued a decree that said that all men shall now wear socks in the courtroom. And given the fact that I am the only man in all of South Alabama who doesn't wear socks in the courtroom, I have no doubt.
That was the Walt Merrell rule.
That was the Walt Merrell rule. So I am, because I am a defender of all things constitutional, I believe in equal rights for everybody. And I certainly am going to give my due deference to the judiciary. I would never disrespect the court in any way. And so the next time I go to court, I'm going to wear pantyhose just like all the women do.
Oh, my God. Oh, please let there be cameras in that courtroom.
I will give one of my employees $300 to make the contempt of court bond in case the judge does throw me into jail. But we'll see. I'll keep you posted. I'll let you know.
I want to know.
Yeah.
I really want to know. I can't believe that they issued a Walt Merrell rule.
They did indeed, yes. And I was quite taken aback. Honestly, only one of them had ever said anything to me. One of the defense lawyers got particularly put out with me one day. And so I saw him after we had gotten into a sort of a heated exchange about the facts of a case and the law's application of those
The only
facts.
thing he could say is, you're not wearing socks.
That's exactly right. So he walks up to the bench, and I see him, as I'm in another conversation, I see him out of the corner of my eye talking to the judge, and I can tell, the judge looks over at me, and he looks over at me, so I know, right? I have no idea but I know.
You know they're talking about you.
Sure. And so the judge leans forward, he says, Mr. Merrill, and he calls me over, and he says, it has come to my attention that you're not wearing socks in the courtroom. And I said, whew. And he said, why are you breathing a sigh of relief? And I said, I thought it would come to your attention that I wasn't wearing underwear. And I said, if socks are the least of your concerns, we're good. Of course, he had no idea what to say in response to that. And the defense attorney was just, fuming out of his ears because I had wiggled out of his little trap. And I think the judge was so embarrassed, he didn't know what to say. And he said, well, just wear socks next time, and kind of, scurried me off. And so now I'm sorry to all of the rest of the lawyers in the state. You will now have to wear socks in the courtroom. And I apologize profusely for
That's an official thing.
It is an official thing, yes. It has become an official thing. And you know what? I guess times they are a-changing, aren't they?
With everything we got going on, it seems like, really, we're spending time on that.
You know what? I just hope they don't start making us wear underwear in the courtroom.
Yeah, especially checking.
That's right, yes.
Yeah. So what has happened? Give me some of the update on some DA stories.
So I was getting ready. Occasionally, people all the time complain about, why does it take so long to get the process completed? And listen, I promise you, there's nobody that wants to be efficient and expeditious as much as I do. because I can tell, I would line them up and say, okay, plead guilty, plead guilty, plead guilty, plead guilty. I can't make people plead guilty. And I oftentimes find myself immersed in things that are just exercises in futility, right? Like I know that they're guilty. They know they're guilty. Their lawyer knows they're guilty. Everybody in the courtroom knows they're guilty, but we're still going to have a trial, right? And it is a complete exercise in futility. So I'm going into court not too long ago, and it's a woman has stolen somebody's checkbook and forged a bunch of checks all over town. And of course, I realize that some of the viewers are like, checkbook? What? Matt's sitting there going, what's a checkbook? But there are some of us who still do use checkbooks.
Yeah.
And she had stolen this little old lady's checkbook, and the little old lady deserved justice, right? And so I'm going to do my job and try to bring the offender to justice. But like, we've got her on video. She wrote checks to herself, Andy. We used her real name and provided her real driver's license to cash the checks with. So the master criminal she is not.
Right.
And so it's an exercise in futility. And I told her lawyer the morning of trial. Now the jury's in the courtroom waiting for us to come in and strike the jury.
You've already, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's like that we are in the throes of it. And I said, what are we doing? And her lawyer said, look, he said, I've tried everything I know to do, and he said, if you want me to take one more run at it, I will. I said, please do. Just talk to her and see if there's something. Is there something I can do that we can save this waste of time? And so he comes back to me in like 10 minutes. He says, you know what? She just says she wants to talk to you. She says, if you'll sit down and talk to her, she'll plead guilty. I said, okay, well, let's sit down and talk with her. Now, she's been in the jail. Now, it's important to understand she's not in the jail for writing all these bad checks. She had a very colorful history. So she's in jail for other things, too.
So she's in and out.
That's right. And so
frequent guest.
Frequent flyer, yes. So I sit down at the desk with her. She's across the desk from me, just like you. Her lawyer's over there in the corner of the office. And the one mistake, we're not in my office. The mistake I made was I let her get in between me and the door. And I never do that. That's just a safety concern. I'm always the first person to the door.
Okay.
and so now to better paint the picture for you, she's 320, 330.
Big
right?
woman.
Big woman, yeah, and healthy woman. And she says, Mr. Walt, she says, I plead guilty. I'll do whatever you want me to do. She said, I know I did wrong. I'm sorry, and I apologize, and I just need you to help me with one thing. And I said, well, what is it? She said, I have a medical problem that I can't get anybody to address. And I said, well, I'm not a doctor, but I can sure, I'll be glad to, call the jail or whoever. I said, tell me what's going on so I know what to do to help. Because even just like the basic interest of human decency says I need to, if she has a medical problem.
Sure.
And without warning and without provocation, she grabs her shirt and pulls it up over her head and exposes her full frontal to me. And Andy, first of all, there are some things in life you just can't unsee. Her lawyer is out the door. He ain't passing go. He ain't collected $200. He's just out the door. And this woman has the worst case of scabies I have ever seen in my entire life. And literally, I didn't say it out loud, but in my mind, I thought to myself, dear, if you'll just put your shirt down, I'll dismiss these charges.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God.
And so, but look, it's funny how people, you just never know what makes somebody tick, right? So I said, please put your shirt down. I see the problem. I understand. I made arrangements for her to get to the doctor, and she got treatment and she pled guilty, and that was it, right? And so the whole judicial process was in a quagmire, all because she had scabies and nobody understood what the problem was. And so I've learned through the years that as a district attorney, if I can really start to figure out what the problem is usually not that somebody committed a crime. If I can start to figure out what the problem is, then I usually can create a lot more efficiency and get the process kind of unclogged, if you will.
So there was no psychological thing about exposing yourself, and that didn't even figure into it?
No, I mean, it was a very psychologically traumatic thing for me.
Oh, yes. God.
I mean, I deal with trauma with humor, so I'm telling you the story so we can laugh about it, right?
Oh, Lord.
There are things in the job, though, that I tell people all the time, there really are things you just can't unsee. I'll never forget the first 5-year-old child victim who was made to make pornography that I met and had to prosecute her case. I'll never forget so many of the homicide scenes that I've been to where you see the body and you experience all of the sensory things. We are really desensitized to death, especially our children are, because they see it on TV all the time. They play it in video games, and to them, death is only a visual thing. But death in real life it's smell, it's sight, it's you taste it on your tongue. It's the deafening silence in a room where there's a dead body, and so those things you just really you can't ever unsee or unforget, and so it is a very real thing that there is some sort of trauma exposure that comes from the job that so many prosecutors across the country do. And you know what? Laughter is the best medicine. And storytelling is too. And that's part of why I love what I do. People ask me all the time, why do you write? Like, don't you have enough to do? And,
right.
And it really is therapeutic for me, because so much of what I write about is I try to be positive, encouraging, make people laugh. I try to make fun of myself and expose my mistakes so that other people might learn from them. And so,
shepherding outdoors is such a great venue for you, and it's such a great release for us. Because reading Shepherding Outdoors, it takes us to a place that either we've been there and we recognize it, or gosh, we want to be there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I try to write. We live in a world where, especially men, are told, if you're not an expert, then you're not a man. And like I say this sort of tongue in cheek. I don't mean to like bash anybody, but I watched one of those outdoor TV shows, the survivalist shows. I watched this guy filter his own urine through a sock that he had taken off of his foot and then drank the urine. And I just thought, there's no part of my masculinity that compels me to want to filter my own urine through a dirty sock and then drink it. That's got
to be Bear Grylls.
Yeah, it was. I just wasn't going to say it because
it's got to be because that was the most fascinating part of Bear Grylls to my boys when they were growing up. I didn't really care about anything else, but they loved to say, so I was walking down the street and then I was thirsty and I was forced to drink my own urine. Because it's like every show he's drinking his own urine.
Yes.
And I was forced to drink my own urine.
And oddly enough, I've never been in a situation in life where I was even considered remotely drinking my own urine. Like,
Well, I got one for you.
Okay.
I got one for you. And I found this out the other day, and it was from the testimony of a meth addict who had recovered. And she said, I know something that, nobody really knows, but I have since found out scientifically the validity of this, is that when somebody does meth, it goes through your body and it comes out and it's still meth.
How about that?
And so she would get a 2-for-1.
How about that?
Wouldn't have to buy it.
How about?
But she would get a 2-for-1.
How about what a testimony to the power of addiction?
No kidding.
Yeah.
No kidding.
That's incredible.
Sheesh.
Like speaking of Bear Grylls, I just realized, and I try to write from the perspective of I'm not an expert. I mean, I tell people all the time, Andy Andrews is right when he says the goal is not to raise good children, it's to raise good adults.
Yeah.
And so I try to speak to the fact that I have made some blunders as a dad. And that really whatever sense of expertise I have really comes from learning from my own mistakes. And I just think there's a place in the world right now, a desperate need really in the world right now for regular folks just to expose their regularity. I'm not anything special. I'm not anything I'm certainly not going to drink my own urine. I'm not. If you put me in a desert environment where my choices are die or drink my own urine, you probably just have to do my eulogy. You know?
Well, what other DA things?
Yeah. So what I see is people who make really bad decisions every day. And some of them, have relatively minor consequences in the grand scheme of things, but some of them have incredibly tragic consequences too. I saw 9 people. I can talk about this case because it's over now too. I try not to talk about cases that are pending. I only talk about them once they're concluded. 9 people, all teenagers or otherwise college kids. And I say that because some of them were supposed to be in college but weren't.
Yeah.
Some of them had been lying to their parents about what they were doing. They load up in a Nissan Cube. Now, if you're unfamiliar with a Nissan Cube, it's that really square-looking Nissan car that really looks like the Shriners ought to be riding it in the parade.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm telling 9 people, we have it on video, the 9 of them folding out of this car, right? And because they ran out of gas after they commit this heinous crime. So they load up under the pretense of, we're going to go rob this man. Some of the girls that were in the car knew the man, so they go to rob him, and he had $20. And they shot him 4 times. For 9 people to split $20. And all of them, every one of them were 22 years or younger. And so you talk about stupid decisions. Like, is your 9th share of $20 worth the prison that you're about to go to? And how did you not at some point say, this is probably a bad idea, right? And I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I think that, I really do know what the answer is. If you look at statistical studies, if you're raised in a fatherless home, you're twice as likely to commit suicide, 4 times as likely to drop out of high school. 80% of people that are sent to juvenile detention facilities are raised in fatherless homes. 67% of high school dropouts are in fatherless homes. And I do know and believe absolutely that the best thing we could ever do to curtail, I don't think we can cure it, but to curtail crime in America is to restore the family. Because I think that it's not just the father's influence. I think the mother is absolutely essential too. But you take a single mom, who I do believe is the unsung hero of the country, and you task her with being the breadwinner, the disciplinarian, the nurturer, and the Band-Aid, bruise, scrape, cut, fixer-upper, and she's overwhelmed, right? But so I think if we restore the family, we'll see all those statistics drop considerably. And then you'll see true change in decision-making. And in those stupid decisions, they'll begin to evaporate some. Now, I guess there'll always be dumb people, and people that are just evil. But it sure would be nice to see those things drop some, to cut back on them some.
Yeah, truly. You're telling me about a man. You told me one time about a man who came home and there was blood, and he thought his wife had been murdered, but she had not been murdered. What's that story?
Yeah, so we had a child abuse and neglect case that we prosecuted. A woman, a heavyset woman, was pregnant, and she wasn't entirely sure that her husband was the father. And she knew she was pregnant, but she had not told him. And because of her size, she was able to conceal her pregnancy pretty well. And so she decided that she was going to conceal it all the way through to delivery and deliver the baby at home. And then her plan was to just dispose of the baby and never tell anybody. And so sure enough, he worked night shifts. She went into labor one night. She delivered the baby at home by herself. She took the baby outside and put it in a trash can. It happened to be one of the coldest nights that we've had in a long time. It was down in the 20s. I think the low that night, it actually got down to 18 degrees. And she just put the baby in a trash can and walked off. Now, fortunately for the baby and for the rest of us, but unfortunately for her, for Mom, she had suffered a pretty severe hemorrhage, and she could not stop the bleeding. And so eventually she realizes, because she actually had some medical training, she realizes I'm hemorrhaging so much that I am going to pass out at some point. So she takes herself to the hospital. Her plan is to go to the hospital, get back and clean up all the blood. Her husband forgot his lunch. It was the night shift, but it was his lunch. And,
Sure.
and so he came home to get his lunch, and he comes into a house that looks like a homicide scene. And so he panics. He calls the police. There's this whole unfolding of events, and eventually the two paths meet, right? The hospital and the police figure out, we got blood, we got the person that's bleeding, and the hospital figures out she's giving birth. And then the police realize, what we're looking for a baby. And so hours later, 8 or 9 hours later, they find the baby in the trash can. And at the time, now this is in the wee hours of the morning by now. And
Sure.
So this baby, and the baby is not closed, the baby is not swaddled, the baby is just discarded. And the baby is surrounded by feral cats. And the doctors told us that the only reason that baby is alive is because those cats had a nurturing instinct, and they collected to the baby and gave body heat to the baby and basically acted like a blanket to the baby. And
Because she didn't put the lid on the garbage can.
because she didn't put the lid on the garbage can. And so they rushed the baby to the officers that found the baby don't even know if the baby's alive.
Right.
They rushed the baby to the hospital. The hospital thermometer reads down to 70 degrees. And the baby was core temperature. They did a rectal reading, and the baby's core temperature was so low that the thermometer wouldn't read. And thanks be to God, that baby lived and is healthy today and is thriving. But I will say, and I like to end my stories with a positive note and a touch of humor. I can finally look at my mom and say, see, there is some benefit to forgetting to put the lid on the trash can, right? But how remarkable is it that stray cats saved a baby's life. And so we prosecuted her. She went to prison. She's still in prison today. The baby is healthy and thriving and doing great. And so, again, one of those things you don't unsee, but also one of the things that at the end of the day, while I don't ever really pat myself on the back, at the end of the day, I am thankful the good Lord put me there to have a role in that and to be involved in that. Yeah.
Good grief. Is there anything funny? Do you see anything funny?
Well, I mean, boobs with scabies on them.
Yeah,
is funny.
that's pretty funny.
Yeah,
that's pretty funny.
Yeah.
Or horrifying.
One or the other, maybe both, maybe a touch of both. I do have, occasionally. I mean, I had a call one day from a police officer who had stopped a man. He was suspected of driving under the influence, and he described the man's symptoms to me, and I would confess I was bewildered. I was like, well, he's clearly drunk. I'm not even sure why you're calling me.
Why are you calling me?
And he said, well, he's on a horse. And I said, is he on a horse in the middle of the street? And he said, yes, he's riding his horse in a drunken stupor down the middle of the street. And I admitted I have no idea if that's DUI. So let me do some quick research. So I quickly looked and determined that you can only be DUI if you're operating a motor vehicle. And so I think he went to jail for public intoxication instead of DUI. Yeah, but apparently you can't drive a horse under the influence and break the law in the state of Alabama.
Oh my gosh, that reminds me of the Andy Griffith Show with Otis drunk riding the cow.
That's right. Remember that? I forgot about Otis riding the cow. Sure did. Otis loved to get taken to jail. He got treated better in jail than he did.
It was his home.
Yeah.
Sheesh.
That is a true phenomenon, by the way. Institutionalization is what we call it.
What?
There are people who get so comfortable and so well-versed in life in incarceration that they prefer it. And so we see, and we have to deal with now, it's a well-known and understood phenomenon. We see people all the time who are released from prison only to go immediately commit a new crime just so they can go right back, because that's where their life is, that's where they're comfortable is, and they prefer it. It's that really there's a high anxiety level with inmates about life on the outside world, especially ones who have been there too long.
This is probably a bad analogy, but it's kind of like being in elementary school. Somebody tells you where to go. Somebody tells you where to sit. Somebody tells you when it's time to eat. Somebody tells you if you can go to the bathroom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you don't have to make any decisions at all.
Yeah.
You just got to go where you're told to go.
You just go out here. It's recess.
Yep.
All right, come back in. Recess is over.
Yep.
I mean.
Sure. Absolutely.
Sheesh. I heard a statistic. In fact, we talked about this with just the most recent guest, Dr. Amanda Vanderhayden. And she does a thing called Spring Math, and it's a nationally recognized thing to help educators educate. Mm-hmm. And we were talking with her about the and I thought it was just Alabama, but she says, no, that's a national statistic that the prison system figures out how many beds they're going to need according to the reading statistics of third graders.
Mm-hmm. There's so much truth. And, I can't remember who said it, but a quote that I've used often in my career was, if you want to close the doors to a prison, open the doors to a school. And the parallelism is uncanny between education or a lack thereof and crime rates. And certainly if we could, it's sort of like the analogy about teaching a man to fish instead of giving him a fish.
Right.
If we could start teaching people instead of giving them things,
right,
then I think that we would see dramatic changes in that regard.
Yeah, and I do too.
And so much of what I deal with is learned behavior too. They learn it it's multi-generational learned behavior, and breaking that cycle is important too.
Buddy, thank you for being here.
Absolutely, I love it.
I love it when you're here. By the way, we can announce that we're figuring out. And Walt is going to be our newest, latest, most exciting contributor to wisdomharbor.com.
Which is an oxymoron. To say that I am going to be a part of anything that is wise, right?
No, I think the first part of wisdom is humility. So you got that. I am very excited about it. I think it's going to be a great project. And I think, I will say to the folks out there in internet world, if you don't know what Wisdom Harbor is, you need to go Google it right now. You need to go to wisdomharbor.com and check out what's going on. It is something that's desperately needed. I'm excited about you being a part of this. And man, this is something for parents, for students, for teachers, for city administrators. Mm-hmm. So anyway, thank you, buddy, for being here. We'll have you back soon.
Sounds good.
All right. I'm Andy Andrews, the professional noticer, harnessing common sense and wisdom to plow through challenges all the way to an answer for you. And I think that'll do it for this week. Get us out of here, Matthew. So, ladies and gentlemen, and to the boys and girls who aspire to become ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of another episode of The Professional Noticer. In a world where common sense has become a superpower, I'm harnessing the tiny bit of mental energy I have for you, seeking wisdom, making observations, and endeavoring to answer tough questions in a way that will empower your family and your business. I'm Andy Andrews. Until next week, goodbye. This episode of The Professional Noticer was produced by Matt Limpert. The Noticer theme written and performed by Sugarcane Jane. None of your brand beeswax for the cast and crew provided by Twinkle and Smoke of Beverly Hills. Additional financial consideration provided by Liquid Battery, America's first razorless shaving gel. Do you hate to shave? Do you consider it a waste of valuable time? Now there is Liquid Battery, a proprietary shaving gel that allows you to completely dissolve facial whiskers in seconds without using a razor. For years, there was no use for dead car batteries. They just piled up in junkyards. Then one of our researchers, working with an old car battery, accidentally splashed the gel-like juice onto his face. 2 months later, when he was discharged from the hospital, our researcher noticed his whiskers had vanished. Thus began the journey of the Liquid Battery line of products. Liquid Battery comes in a glass jar and should be spread on any whiskered regions with a metal kitchen spoon. After liberal application, the facial area should be immediately washed. And just like that, you'll be whisker-free and your face will sport a healthy, bright red glow. Join the men using Liquid Battery today. And ladies, we're now offering Fiery Eve, a Liquid Battery product for your legs and underarms. That's Liquid Battery at AutoZone's, Napa, and O'Reilly's nationwide, or online at liquidbattery.com.